Hi, and welcome along to AFTV News Daily, the early edition. I hope you guys are all doing well today. Hope you all had a good night and have had a good morning. The sun is shining over here in the UK and we can't go outside. But it is what it is, man. We can't go outside. We know what's going down. It's just how it is at the moment, but it's a real shame. But I hope you're all doing well this morning. Had some great videos yesterday. I don't know if you managed to catch last night. I had Expressions Tottenham fan on here, and it was a load of laughs and lots of banter. If you didn't check that out last night, make sure you get along and check out that video today. It was hilarious. I'm just checking my mic is working here today. Yep, we're on, right? So let's get into the news for today. And first of all, a lot of news regarding Mikel Arteta. He went out yesterday. When I say went out, he was at home, but he gave an interview yesterday to Sky, and very interesting interview. They were asking him about a lot of things. One of the main things he said is that he's now fully recovered. So that was great to hear that he's fully recovered from the coronavirus. Must have been really scary for him and his family. So great that he's fully recovered. However, he was asked a lot of other questions, and the most interesting one for me, what Mikel Arteta was asked, was about transfers. Now, on transfers, he how can I say it? I mean, listen, he told the truth. He said he's planning for 2 or 3 different scenarios. That was his words. Obviously because of the circumstances that we're going through right now. That's, I suppose, pretty obvious, but his words were, depending on what those are, what those 3 scenarios are, because he said, I'm planning on 2 or 3 different scenarios that we can face. Depending on one of those 3, we will be able to do more, less, or nothing. More, less, or nothing. And of course, that nothing and the less thing worries us a lot as Arsenal fans, because we know to get back on track, to be looking at trying to make an attack on winning the league, it needs to be more. And at the moment, the way things are going with this whole coronavirus crisis, you have to say that we're probably looking at less or none. And that's quite startling that he said none. That basically Arsenal might not do any transfers when the transfer window opens, whenever that is. They might not do any transfers because of the financial situation that they're going to be in. And I've been saying it right from the start of this crisis that it's going to have a major effect on football clubs, no matter how big you are. And I think you see it there in a nutshell when you hear him saying that there is a possibility that Arsenal could do nothing. And, that's not because they don't want to do nothing, but they just may be forced into that situation. Now, there's going to be people out there saying, well, this is where we want to see Stan Kroenke put his hand in his pocket, fork some money out because of the situation we're in. We know that Arsenal doesn't run like that. We know that that Kroenke doesn't really put his hand into his pocket and hand out money like that. He wants it to run, all as a proper business where, we spend what we earn, which I suppose is honourable. But in a situation like this, is that going to be enough to get Arsenal moving ahead? Could we be looking at another couple of seasons of mediocrity? And let's say we go and try and invest in those youth and try and see if they can bring us out of this mire. But that is the situation at the moment that he's saying, it could be more, it could be less, it could be nothing. And that's the starting situation of this whole coronavirus crisis at the moment. So a lot of these big targets we're being linked to and stuff like that, I think the likelihood of some of those really expensive signings happening at Arsenal this summer or wherever the transfer window does open, I think when you hear a statement like that, it starts to look very unlikely, especially when it doesn't look like the season will be, there was a lot of talk that the season could be back in May when this whole thing kicked off. Now we're hearing that the government might have this whole lockdown continuing in till the end of May. Where does that then put football what situation does that put football in? If it does come back, we're looking at it coming back in June, July, which is what I said right from the beginning, that don't look for it to come back before them sort of months. And if it does, it might be behind closed doors. But you see now why a lot of the football clubs are so desperate to get the season completed as well, because, you know, they could lose so much money. There could be crippling even for big clubs like Arsenal. Interestingly today as well, Hector Bellerin, obviously one of the players at Arsenal who does carry still a lot of value. He's still only 25, Hector Bellerin. You probably think he's older than that, but remember, he's been, you know, in that Arsenal first team for a very, very long time now. Talk today that Hector Bellerin getting linked with a move away. He's been linked with Sevilla. He's been linked with Atletico Madrid. He's been linked with Inter Milan. You know, three pretty major clubs there, all interested in Hector Bellerin. All of those three clubs looking for a right back. Hector Bellerin, of course, we know he had that terrible injury. He's come back from the injury. He's been a bit up and down, but you'd expect that, you know. You'd expect him to be a bit up and down because it was a major injury. But what do we do? Do we keep hold of Hector Bellerin? We've heard Hector Bellerin say that, you know, he would like to put in his candidacy for the captaincy. And if Aubameyang goes, you know, that might be available. So do we cash in on a Hector Bellerin? You know, because he would be of value. You know, I'm sure a player of Hector Bellerin, you're talking £30 million plus at least. And he's still got, you know, quite a lengthy contract. Do we cash in on a Hector Bellerin, or do we keep Bellerin, get him back to full fitness, and then he becomes a major player in the team? I'd love to hear from you guys today. I'm going to put a poll up on it. Cash in on Hector Bellerin or keep him? Do you think he's a vital player in the team, even though, as I said, it hasn't been the greatest season so far for him, but we have to remember where he's coming from and how he's coming back from. So cash in on him because he would be a player of value, or keep hold of him. That's what I'd like to hear from you guys today. And I also linked with this guy from Lyon. Now, his name is Hossein Aurier. He's a midfielder who's attracting a lot of interest from a lot of clubs. He's really had a fantastic season. He's seen as like one of those real emerging talents. He's a guy that's going to be a real top player. Arsenal said to be interested in him. Lyon got him under contract until 2023, and we already know, right, that Lyon, when it comes to, you know, hard bargains, they're the club for their owner is a guy who drives a very hard bargain, and that would not be a cheap deal to get done. I mean, there's been people quoting figures of around about 65 million pounds. I don't think it would command anything near that, but you know, it just goes to show, you know, that, you know, these sort of players, young talents, but emerging talents who could be a top talent, are going to be very expensive. Also being heavily linked with him. Again, somehow I seem to kind of doubt that, because I just look on it and I say, well, this is where we're probably going to have to invest in players like Guendouzi, you know, and hope that they become those really top players that we're looking for. Because, as I said, going back to what Mikel Arteta said, it just doesn't look like there's going to be that major money available, you know, this transfer window to buy players. You know, it all depends on how we come out of this whole situation. So those are some of the transfer links. And as I said, very interesting today. Let's get into some of your comments on it. Got this comment straight away from Omar, who's watching on Facebook. Remember, we're on Facebook, we're live on Twitter, we're live on YouTube as well, and on Twitch. So if you're joining us on all of those platforms, welcome. Omar says, why would Aurier want to join us? And, you know, yes, there is that, but I'm sure that a player like Aurier wouldn't mind joining a team like Arsenal. Arsenal still looked upon as a big club. We are still looked upon as a big club, still looked upon as an attractive club. Yes, not as attractive as we used to be, because we just haven't been winning things. But I think we are still looked on looked upon as an attractive club by some of these players, particularly who play over in France. They know all about the history of the club. You know, somebody like Aurier will see that Lacazette is at Arsenal, you know, who's an ex-Lyon player. Yeah, I mean, so we'd still be quite an attractive club for somebody coming from a team like Lyon, although they are in the Champions League and Arsenal ain't. Ichiro says, Upamecano, then our defence is set with Saliba, Tierney and Bellerin. Again, the Upamecano thing, when you hear those words coming out from Mikel Arteta, as I remind you again, right, more, less or nothing, right? If it's in the less even, forget Upamecano. I think I start to look at it and I think deals like Upamecano, you know, are going to be very, very difficult to get that done. Winfred says, do you think you wrote? I think I'm saying, do you think you wrote off Arteta early? I can't figure that out. Nobody's writing off Arteta right now, so you know, I'm certainly not. Abdel says, we need Maddison or Grealish, not Aurier. Listen, again, Maddison, Grealish, what sort of money would they be? You're talking, again, 60, 70 million pounds. Is it not our job maybe then when we look at those sort of figures to then look on it and say, let's turn Guendouzi into those players, you know? Guendouzi's still a very young player. Can he become, you know, what Grealish has been doing? Or, you know, I know he's just kind of slightly different type of player, but you know, we're going to have to work with a lot of these young players. We're definitely going to have to work with them. D-Dubs91 here from Twitter. He's saying cash in on Lacazette. That is a player that we could possibly cash in on. Lacazette. Again, me personally, I'd like to see us trying to keep our best players. I really would like to try and see us keep. If we're not going to be buying loads of players, then we don't want to be selling our best players. Simple as that. You know, so that's for me. That's what we should be doing. Big up Hammered there. But you know, that's what we should be doing. The Smiths 1986 says, you see Deeney as bigged up Saka. Yes, I saw that interview where Troy Deeney was bigging up Saka and saying that he's a top player, which he is. And again, that is an example of one of the young players that's come through the system and that is going to be a vitally important player for Arsenal. Can play left back, can play you know, left wing, and is a star of the future. You know what I mean? So yeah, you know. Karim says, Robbie, there was hardly any money to spend when things were normal. No chance Arsenal are spending a lot, if any money right now. I suppose he's got a point there. You know, even if things were normal, how much money would have we been needed to spend? Certainly, the club would have been under a lot of pressure to spend big this summer. Definitely been under a lot of pressure to spend big this summer. The fans would have been putting a lot of pressure on the owners and saying, now that's perspective of that's going to be a lot different because of the situation that we're in right now. Jonathan says, we need to recruit smartly. Clubs that will be forced to sell because of the impact it will have on them due to the coronavirus. I think we can get bargains and build a great team. Arteta is a brilliant manager and knows what he's doing. I'm sure he knows the players he would want to bring in, and it does look like look for lots of bargains this season. You know, I can just see a lot of bargains would be the sort of players that we're going to be looking for. Certainly, this next gentleman, AM, he's saying Ndidi next to Aurier and Havertz in front of him is a perfect midfield for Arsenal, but also a very, very expensive midfield to bring in, right? Which you're not likely to see that this season. I mean, I was seeing today that Havertz is saying that he'd rather stay in Germany. Of course, Bayern Munich are really interested in him, and Havertz is said to prefer to stay in Germany and to, you know, to become a Bayern Munich player this summer. Again, we'll have to see how that one works out. Scott says, given the financial restrictions, who would be Saliba's ideal centre-back partner? So you're talking about buying, or are you talking about who's there already? I think who's there already at the moment, you'd have to say probably David Luiz at the moment, because he'll have a bit more experience. Or I think Rob Holding it would be nice to see Rob Holding as that person in the future, but who knows who knows what it's going to be. HK Football says we don't need a new centre back. We've got Saliba, Mari, Papa, and Mustafi. Remember, we've got Pablo Mari. I mean, that's true. Let's not forget that we've got Pablo Mari there. So, are we gonna keep hold of him? That's going to be the interesting thing to see. Alan, enough respect for your message. Keep those messages coming in. So many of them coming in. Here's another one. Lincoln says Timo Werner for Aubameyang if he leaves. Again, where are we going to get the money? I mean, it would seem to me that even if they did get rid of Aubameyang, right, then that money might not be going on the players that we're talking about. That's why, for me, if that money's not going to go, say Aubameyang was sold, if that money weren't used properly, just keep it. I'd rather see the contract run out, Aubameyang try and get us into the Champions League, and then he just goes. Honestly, because for me, if we cash in on Aubameyang and go and get some substandard players, I mean, Timo Werner, by the way, he's not a substandard player. He'd be a brilliant replacement, but I just don't think, I just couldn't see Timo Werner coming to Arsenal at the moment. It would just be too much money. You know what I mean? We just wouldn't be able to, when you hear those words from Arteta, where are we going to get that money from? Camille says, we need to declare the Emirates as a corona-free zone and demand Aubameyang signs a contract to enter. Well, that could be that could be a way of doing it. Lucian says, we have to sell Lacazette. He's finishing his poor. I don't agree with that. And, he was having a bit of a rough time, but remember, towards the end of when we got to this lockdown, he was starting to bang in the goals. I think it was the last 3 out of the last 4 games. So his form was picking up. He's been going for a rough time. That happens to lots and lots of strikers, but I still believe in. I really do still believe in him, Let me get this one here. This is Jordan. He says, Don Robbie, I've been trying for ages. This is the first time I've been here live. Would you, and it's nice to have you, Jordan. Thanks for coming on. Would you accept 0 signings in this weird next window if it guaranteed that we kept the whole squad, including Aubameyang? Well, it's kind of to the point what I was just saying. Listen, we need signings. We know that if we're gonna win things, or we're gonna have any hope of trying to make a dent on the league and get back to where we want to be, we need to make signings, right? We need to strengthen up the defense, But if it's going to be such a tight situation where there's just no money really to spend, then I would keep Aubameyang and just go with the squad that I got and just say to that squad, right, let's see if we can squeeze the best out of that squad, get into the top 4 for next season, and then we go again. And if Aubameyang walks after that, he walks. I know it would be a loss of money, but for me, if the money comes in and it just goes into a black hole, which is Kroenke's pocket, or that money just disappears to pay bills, I would rather keep Aubameyang because I know that he could help us to get into the Champions League. That's how I'm looking on it. I'm looking at it from a fan's point of view, Alpha says, I heard we were linked with a 16-year-old Marvin Cannon, a Canadian wonder kid. I don't really know a lot about that, but okay, if that's true, that fits what we like very well. David G says, a good source told me that Dangote is taken over of Arsenal in 2021. Of course, Dangote, the billionaire who's based over in Nigeria, in Africa, has already said that he wants to take over the club in 2021. However, with this coronavirus thing, even people like him are going to have a big dent on their money. Would he still have the money to buy Arsenal? Would Kroenke be willing to sell Arsenal after all this? What happens there? That's going to be another interesting one, because obviously, it's going to be a really bad situation even for the billionaires right now. It's tough, and for someone like Kroenke, who's building a new stadium over there for the LA Rams, money's going to be really, really short for him as well. So could he be saying to himself, well, you know what, maybe let me concentrate on the Rams and offload Arsenal? Who knows? Rahul says, sell Lacazette and buy Mitrovic from Fulham. Or he says, sell Aubameyang and buy Everton Sarres, sell Guendouzi and buy Calvin Phillips, sell David Luiz and buy Unai Nunes. It sounds very easy, mate, when you say it all there. They've got to be all willing to go for starters. But listen, we don't have to sell. That's a bit of a selling spree. The thing is about it, right? It's not about just sell. We need to be buying in quality to replace these guys. Ashton M says, what should we do with Mkhitaryan? Well, for me, that's one player I would definitely be selling. Again, the sort of money that Arsenal are looking for Mkhitaryan, they don't seem to be able to, nobody seems to be able to be willing to pay that sort of money. I think Arsenal are looking for in excess of 20 million. I think Roma are willing to pay about 10. That could be less now. Remember, Italy's been hit very, very hard by this crisis as well. So, but Mkhitaryan, definitely, we need to move him on. We need to, there's a couple of loan players that we need to move on, but he's one of them. El Neni's another one of them. How much we'll get for them, I don't know, but they're players that need to be sold and come completely off of the Arsenal wage bill. Robbie, this happens. Hamza says, Robbie, Arsenal can sell Aubameyang and use the money to buy Gnabry back. Oh, yeah. Possible lineup, Laka, Pepe and Gnabry, use Martinelli as backup. Well, listen, Gnabry would be one of the most expensive players in Europe right now if he was available to buy. You'd be talking about £100 million player. He'd be up towards that sort of money. He's Germany's best player at the moment. He's the best player in Germany at the moment, apart from take Lewandowski out of the picture. But as a German international, as a German player, he's the best player, right? So he will not, and he's playing at a massive club in Bayern Munich. To buy a player like that, still young, you're talking 100 million, easy, or near that, Camille says, Robbie, I don't think we need to sign a centre midfield. People forget about Emil's. He's on about Emil Smith-Rowe. He's doing bits at Huddersfield, and I think he's ready to slot into our first team. It could be, again, guys like Emil Smith-Rowe could be, brought back to play in that Arsenal first team. Players like that are going to get considered now. It's going to be good for some of these young players, I think. It's a good chance for them to get a lot of first-team football, because I just don't think, not just us, it ain't just going to be Arsenal. A lot of clubs ain't going to be spending the big money. They're not going to be spending the big money because they ain't going to have it. It's the times that we're in with this coronavirus. Mohammed says, why would Arteta say Arsenal are going to spend loads of money when there is so much scrutiny all over the world in football, and when people are struggling? Arteta is conscious of the times, back the coach. Of course, that's a good point as well. Very good point. Even if they did have a lot of money to spend, it wouldn't really seem right if he said, we got loads of money to spend right now. Don't worry about us. We're nice. That wouldn't go down well either. But listen, I don't think that's the case. That's the thing about it. That's not the case. We will not have the money to spend big come this summer. That is the reality. It's not that he's trying to hide anything. That is the reality of it. Neil Gunner says, I want Bolly and Neves from Wolves. What do you think? They'd be two great signings, but again, very unlikely. I like Neves. I think a guy like Neves who scores lots of goals from midfields. I think he there's a stat that says that he scores the most goals from outside the box of any player in the Premier League. I really, really like Neves, but would Arsenal try and buy a player like Neves? Would they be able to afford to get a player like Neves? I think somebody like Neves would come to Arsenal, but Would they do it? Again, who knows? It depends on what money is there to spend. Annie A. Kenny says offload Mkhitaryan, Ozil, El Neni, Mustafi, Socrates, and Chambers, and use the money for a quality DM and a central midfielder. That's what he says. I'm going to get a couple more before we end the show today. Luke Webb is saying that we should sell Xhaka. Funny enough, you know what I mean? That was one that was really, you know, a couple of months ago, I think everybody would have wanted to get rid of Xhaka. Not so much now. You know, not so much now that, you know, he had a pretty decent sort of, decent sort of period under Mikel Arteta since he's come in. So not so much now. Well, Xhaka's no longer really a player that everybody's rushing to sell at the moment. And again, if things are really, really tight, you know, all of a sudden, keeping Xhaka might be quite important. SB says, if we lose Aubameyang, I can't imagine what this club will do. It's given me Overmars flashbacks. So it's given me Overmars flashbacks. It's given me flashbacks of Van Persie, flashbacks of Nasri, flashbacks of Fabregas, flashbacks of Ashley Cole. How many more of our best players are we going to sell? And understand Kroenke's ownership. Year in, year out, selling our best players. It's just not good enough. Right? Why can't we keep these guys? Listen, let's look at Arsenal for a minute, yeah? A lot of times we've been nearly there, but then we sell our best players all the time. How are you going to win anything when you're always constantly selling your best players? It's not rocket science, is it? You're not going to win nothing. So this is why, for me, it's important to hold on to players like Aubameyang, you know? So, Dan says, what do our scouts actually do, Robbie? Well, you know what? To be fair to the scouts, you know, they've scouted some decent players. You know, I mean, look at Guendouzi, look at Martinelli. You know, those are players that have been scouted and bought in for next to nothing. That if you turn around tomorrow and said you were going to sell them, they'd be probably like quadruple what we paid for them. So no, I wouldn't agree with that. I think the scouts have been doing a good job at Arsenal, and the academy's been doing a good job. But we've got to keep hold of our best players. Those players still need to be brought through by the senior players. Joey AFC says, big up the NHS, keep safe, people. 100%, Joey. I think that's a great note to end on today. Keep safe out there. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Don't forget, we're going to be back this evening. On tonight's show, we've got Drifty, Liverpool fan. It's going to be interesting to see what he's got to say about whether the season should be completed or not. So we're going to have him on. Don't forget as well, we've got the Bias Premier League show out today. Look out for that. Got some great videos coming up over Easter, actually. We've got the car challenge between me and DT. The All Guns Blazing podcast is coming out. Great content for you to watch over the Easter right here on AFTV. So keep it locked here. Thanks for your support through this very, very tough period. We've also got a big announcement coming. Might have that announcement for you tomorrow. Got a big meeting about it today. Might have that announcement for you tomorrow. Listen, thanks for today, and we'll see you tomorrow.